I used all my skills to draw this Midjourney logo. Today it's all about the new Midjourney update version 7. There's some cool new features, the draft mode, the new prompt bar, and extended personalization. I also made a direct comparison between Midjourney version 6.1 and the new image generator from ChatGPT. Let's go. The time has finally come. The new version of Midjourney is live. However, as we learn in the update section, this new version 7 is only part of a larger relaunch that will take place over the next 60 days. It can therefore be assumed that the look and feel of the Midjourney app will continue to change over time. The highlight in version 7 update 1 is currently the draft mode. This is in direct competition with the ChatGPT image generator. With draft mode, you are now also able to make your prompt entries via audio, i.e. a microphone. This is very convenient. The only disadvantage is that images appear blurred and out of focus, i.e. the quality is not as good. On the other hand, the speed of image creation is unusually fast. Before we get started with Create, let me show you a few of the changes and new functions in Midjourney version 7. First of all, let's take a look at the prompt bar. We are actually already very familiar with its structure. But a few things are immediately noticeable. For example, this P, which stands for personalize, is a new addition, and then there's draft mode. If we click on the settings here, we can select the new Model 7 under version. There we also find the draft mode. Very important. If you use draft mode, always remember that the images are only preliminary versions. The images are created 10 times faster than usual, but they are only concept images that you can then refine further. If we briefly go back to version 6.1, the use of images as a reference has changed. You can now drag images in here. In the lower section it says drop image to describe. In version 6.1, we see image prompt on the far left, style reference in the middle, and character reference on the right. If you have an image, simply drag and drop it in here. This tells Midjourney what purpose you want to use the image template for. Of course, I can also use all three. If you want to remove the images again, simply click on the X in the small preview image at the top right. Now let's look at the prompt using the example a house with personalize. If I want to use personalization, simply use this P and switch the function on and off. Switched on means that the selected personalize code, here for example, face is colourful, is used. The active mood board, the selected personalize code, is visualized by the red checkmark. I switch personalize off again for now. As you can see here, I have created these 4 images with the prompt a house. If I now activate personalize again and take the mood board of my choice, the result is also a picture according to the prompt a house, but this time exactly according to my personal style. For the user, this is of course a significant improvement in the workflow, as they can activate it here at the top of the prompt bar and don't get bogged down. However, they can still follow the familiar route via the left-hand navigation. Click Personalize there and use the profile of their choice via Use Profile on the following page. This integrates a long code into the upper prompt bar in front of which you then enter your prompt. The only disadvantage, the new method requires you to know which style is hidden behind which name. Let me try the process with version 7 as well. If I now want to use images as a reference via drag and drop again, the describe function is still available, but the control panel above it is missing the section for character reference. This is apparently not yet available in version 7. Again, if you no longer want it, simply remove it by clicking the X. Let's now evaluate the first major highlight of version 7, the draft mode. First, I switch back to version 6.1. When I activate draft mode, the following happens. On the right, we see this little microphone icon. If I click on it, I can enter my prompt via audio, i.e. using my microphone, and don't have to write anything. Of course, this assumes that you have a microphone. You will also have noticed that in draft mode, this small image icon on the left disappears. Now let's try out an example. By the way, If you use draft mode, Midjourney switches to version 7 automatically, so you don't have to change it manually. Simply click on the microphone and say, "A house in Iceland." Midjourney uses this short audio input to create a suitable prompt to generate a basic image. Add an elephant in the foreground. I now start my refinement process and model, if you can call it that, the prompt. Change the colour to lush green. As you can see, Midjourney follows my prompt exactly and changes the colour of the meadow. The elephant is also still in the picture. Add a sports car next to the house. This was also executed, and now the Enhance function comes into play. If you are happy with the prompt, simply click on Enhance. What you have seen so far were preview images. With Enhance, Midjourney then creates 4 better images based on the final, last, prompt. But these are not identical, but similar. We see in this example, the elephant is there, the sports car, and also the house. All in all, it looks well done. Let me try another example. A football field. As you can see, Midjourney generates an empty football field as a basic framework. Add 2 players on the field and a kitten. Midjourney now expands the prompt. We see the kitten and the 2 players. Again, if I press Enhance, Midjourney does not generate the identical images from this design phase, but follows the jointly developed prompt with a similar picture in a significantly improved version. I can also refine this further. The next task is to compare the images, without using draft mode, between Midjourney and the ChatGPT image generator. Now that all the hype is centered around Midjourney, I would also like to make an internal comparison between the previous version 6.1 and the new version 7. And I can tell you, the results are extremely surprising. For this series of comparisons, I created 7 prompts of varying complexity and tested them on the 3 platforms. The first example was about a group of cute kittens fleeing from a bear on the highway. The foremost kitten has a sign around it with the word "help" written on it. What we see here is the result of Midjourney version 6.1. Apart from a few minor details, it already looks relatively good. If we now turn our attention to the new version 7, we see this result. Very strange. Obviously, the training data is missing here. To put it mildly, we could say that there is still a lot of room for improvement here. If we compare the results of version 6.1 and 7 directly with each other, it doesn't look like an improvement. However, if we look at the ChatGPT image generator, there is little room for criticism. The implementation follows the prompt specification 100%. The kittens, the sign, the bear with the flag. I would say 100 out of 100 points. Midjourney, especially version 7, is clearly underperforming. In the next example, the focus was on that much-loved Studio Ghibli style. A lighthouse keeper watches in horror as a gigantic wave races towards the coast. This is the result of version 6.1, this is the implementation of version 7, and this is the result of the ChatGPT image generator. Here too, the implementation of ChatGPT must be named the winner, because the OpenAI platform simply provides the better solution. The next example, implemented in Minecraft style, takes us to the Amazon jungle. A military helicopter flies through dense bushes, dinosaurs wander across the plain, and a white flag with the inscription, "Which AI is better?" hangs on the back of the helicopter. Again, first the implementation of Midjourney version 6.1, then the result of version 7. The prompt is actually very complex, and this is the result of the ChatGPT image generator. I think the question of who won is redundant. The prompt for the next comparison was, a country singer stands on a stage at night surrounded by thousands of fans. Behind her the band and a large screen. The singer's face is to be displayed in large format on this screen. This is version 6.1, this is version 7, and this is the implementation with the ChatGPT image generator. Again, this image is done quite well, but the prompt is not executed completely because the woman's face is not visible on the big screen. Here you can see the face on the screen. Version 7 has done it quite well, but the singer's hat extends beyond the screen. That can't be, because the screen has a limited format. In this picture, you could say that the woman's face was not ideally rendered, but overall, this version is the closest to the specification. Now, I wanted to test a long text. The next example uses a tomato and charred toast. In version 6.1, it is a more photorealistic implementation. The tomato is holding a sign. The sign says, "Let's have a big," with 2 eyes. Tomato. We'll pay all the expenses. Apart from the text, this image is well realised. But with version 7, you have to ask yourself what this is all about. The text is also thought-provoking and reads, "Let's parto tomatoato will alex panis alex penses." Very strange that this is supposed to be an optimised version. And again, the version from ChatGPT, you're immediately happy because you know it's just right here. The text is perfectly implemented. Version 7 and the image generator are illustrations, and version 6.1 is more of a photo, but ChatGPT is again much better. In the next example, I wanted to challenge the AI platforms with a very complex approach. To do this, I nested things inside each other. The prompt was, "A bottle is in a bucket. This bucket is at the top of a ladder. The ladder is leaning against a box. Smoke is pouring out of the box, and the smoke looks like a skull. It clearly follows a chain of causality." The implementation of version 6.1 is in itself very well done, but everything is next to each other, and the smoke comes out of the bottle. There is no skull to be seen. Here we see the result of version 7. Unlike the previous image, the elements are correct here. The bottle is in the bucket is on the ladder, but the ladder is not leaning against the box, and at the top we see a kind of skull made of smoke. So the realization does not follow the prompt exactly. As was to be expected, ChatGPT's implementation looks different and much better. Here is the ladder. On top of it is the bucket. In the bucket is the bottle. Next to it is the box from which the smoke pours out and forms a skull. In the last example, I was interested in the topic t-shirt and mock-up. The prompt reads, "A kitten in vector style on a yellow t-shirt. Above the animal it says cute fellow in a curved font." In version 6.1, the text is below the kitten. In version 7, it is actually visually quite attractive. But if we look closely, there is a strange mishmash at the feet, and an L is missing from fellow in the text. The implementation of ChatGPT again leaves nothing to be desired. You could say that the white colour in the cat, as implemented in Midjourney, is missing, but that was explicitly not part of the prompt. It was supposed to be a pure black realization. The curved lettering is also written flawlessly and is positioned above the kitten. The ChatGPT image generator really is a great tool when it comes to prompt adherence. As a Midjourney fan, I really have to say this, I am totally disillusioned. The results seem unexpectedly unfinished. There is a slight suspicion that Midjourney has released this half-finished version in a panic. After all, there is even talk that some things still need further testing in order to stay in the public eye. But does it make sense to release things hastily, especially when some applications are rather too complex? Perhaps training data is missing, or the draft mode, which is relatively rough, has an impact on normal image creation. In the course of the new version 7, I also wanted to analyse the navigation again, especially in the Organise section. This certainly doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the update, but I think if we take a closer look at Midjourney, this couldn't hurt either. So let me give you a brief insight into the filters and view options. Let me show you my images. In the View Options section, I can display all the images in the form of an overall preview. I can enlarge or reduce them. If I'm not mistaken, the image size is set to large by default. However, this is relatively inconvenient for people like me who search visually, because they then have to scroll down forever. Simply use the small selection option here, because then the images are significantly smaller, and you can view the results of several days at the same time. This is much better structured overall. Medium would also work, but small is, at least for me, the best option. In the Profiles section, you can sort images according to your mood boards, i.e. the personalization codes. If I select faces colourful here, for example, then all images created with this style are displayed. Of course, you can also click on any other mood board to display individual images and escape the chaos of thousands of images. At the top, we see the saved searches filters. This is a search algorithm that you define yourself and that you can use to display selected images based on keywords. In this specific case, it's unfluffy monsters. If I click on it, I get all the pictures whose prompt contains the word monster. If you want to create such a search option yourself, it's relatively simple. Click on Add Search, then enter a title for your search. In the search terms area, you can then define individual words separated by commas that are decisive for your search function. For example, world or animal. Then save. That's it. This is how I created the Demo 2 search option. All images containing the keywords of Demo 2 are now displayed. Finally, I'll show you the filters. Here you can adjust the display according to rating, type, image size, version, published, and other. You can use many of the fields at the same time to narrow down or expand your image selection. Just try it out. It's actually self-explanatory, but very helpful. Another topic I consider very relevant in view of the new version 7 of Midjourney, the choice of browser. I'm normally a Firefox user, but in version 7, I found that some important features obviously don't work. On the left, you can see the Firefox browser, and on the right, the Google Chrome browser. For example, if we look at the Personalize section, I click here first in Firefox, then we jump to the Personalization dashboard. I do the same in Google Chrome. Here too, we are in the Personalization dashboard. If I now scroll down in Chrome, the individual mood boards appear. There I can see the small graphics that represent the style typical of the theme. So it's not just the title, you can also see these thumbnails. However, when I scroll down in Firefox, these images are missing. Since I can't define what the style looks like based on the title alone, I now have to click on the corresponding mood board each time to see what's behind it. This process is not only pointless, but also annoying. I can't remember all the styles. In Chrome, on the other hand, I can immediately see the associated style. This is the only way I can and want to work. Much more important, however, is the fact that the microphone doesn't seem to work in Firefox, despite the correct settings. With draft mode, however, its use has become an essential part of working with Midjourney. You can see the microphone icon in both browsers. When I click on it in Firefox, I see the correct setup at the top of the browser bar, so everything should work, right? But when I click on it, nothing happens in Firefox. If I do the same thing in Google Chrome, the audio input via microphone is activated immediately. Of course, it's also possible that this is a local problem on my end, but if there is such a cool function as voice prompting, then I want to use it. After all, it makes the process much quicker and easier. Then you can concentrate on the image and not the keyboard. So for me, for both personalization and draft mode, Google Chrome is my browser of choice when using Midjourney version 7. Finally, let me make a brief personal statement about the version 7 update. I deliberately chose this picture. If you use the draft mode in Midjourney version 7, you have to change your way of thinking. Simply start by thinking about an empty basic structure that you gradually fill with content. Only when you are satisfied with the overall prompt, then press Enhance. You can then select one of the better images created by Midjourney and refine it further. This brings you back to the familiar rhythm. Time will tell whether the creation of images in this way will be accepted by users. Especially because with ChatGPT, you can say what you need, and this will then be realized. Basically, it's an exciting approach because you can deduce from an image what you want to change or add. But if I know from the outset what my image should look like, then the procedure with the ChatGPT image generator is somewhat simpler. This is especially true for the implementation of text, which is extremely important for some images. With Midjourney, this is still an absolute handicap and doesn't make using the platform any fun. Why should I try 100 times with Midjourney when it works right from the start with ChatGPT? I'm curious to see what Midjourney will deliver with the next updates. Things like 3D or video are on the cards. It remains exciting. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel and recommend it to others. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Your channel, AI, Now You Know.